An outline of the text. Preface. Shinran opens with praise of Amida's working to save all beings. This working is manifested as Amida's light and name, which together form the teaching and practice, the way to salvation for people of the present. Shinran then urges us to live Amida's vow, and declaring his own and trusting to the true and real teaching, practice, and realization, explains his reasons for writing this work. Teaching. The larger Sutra of Immeasurable Life is the basic scripture of Shin Buddhism and the true teaching for which Sakyamuni Buddha appeared in the world. The aim of this sutra is to explain Amida's vow and name. Practice. Practice in Shin Buddhism is called great. That is, the Buddha's practice, for it does not arise from a person's own efforts. Rather, it is directed to the person by Amida. This practice, which is saying the name, constitutes one of the major elements of Amida's directing of virtue for our attainment of enlightenment. The other mentioned here being Shinjin. Practice and Shinjin are inseparable, for it is through the name that Amida awakens Shinjin in us, and it is Shinjin that forms the essence of the true utterance of the name. Even a single utterance, being Amida's practice manifesting itself in us, is perfectly possessed of the power to bring us to birth in the Pure Land. In this section, Shinran quotes two passages from the larger sutra that speak of hearing the name and realizing Shinjin and joy, and which include the phrase Naishi Ichinen. At the close of the section, he considers Naishi Ichinen in detail. Traditionally, this term was interpreted to mean, quote, saying the name even once, close quote, in both of the sutra passages. Shinran, however, understands Ichinen in the first passage on the fulfillment of the 18th vow to refer to the one thought moment of the realization of Shinjin, for that which makes utterance of the name great practice and allows it to hold the virtue to bring about birth is Shinjin, directed to us out of the Buddha's sincere mind. Naishi Ichinen therefore is understood here both in terms of utterance of the name, indicating single-heartedness rather than a specific number of repetitions, and in terms of realization of Shinjin, indicating the briefest instant of the immediate present in which the timeless Amida's mind emerges in time so that the practicer, while he continues his samsaric existence, at the same time transcends it. Thus, Naishi Ichinen expresses Shinran's understanding of the fundamental unity of practice and Shinjin, and the explanation here forms a natural transition to the section on Shinjin. Shinjin. The utterance of the name is rooted in Shinjin, but since Shinjin is awakened in us solely by Amida's power, it is extremely difficult to attain for beings who are habitually attached to their own powers. Nevertheless, when one realizes Shinjin, one is filled with the Buddha's virtues. Realization. Realization is the natural result of Amida's working in us as practice and Shinjin. Shinran gives 3 descriptive titles for the 11th vow. 1. Vow of unfailing attainment of nirvana. Those who dwell in the stage of the truly settled, that is, those who have realized Shinjin, will necessarily attain nirvana. 2. The realization of great nirvana. Beings will realize emancipation, that is, they will attain birth in the Pure Land and become the Supreme Buddha. 3. Vow of realization, which is Amida's directing his virtue for our going forth. Since the content of realization here is identical to that in the second title, this title makes clear that the realization is the result of Amida's ego for our going forth. The second and third titles indicate that realization results from the cause of practice and Shinjin directed by Amida. This realization is not separate from the unfailing attainment of nirvana in the first title. As stated in Notes on the Essentials of Faith alone, one, quote, attains the supreme nirvana without fail because one has already entered the ocean of the vow, close quote. In order to unfailingly attain nirvana, one must enter the ocean of the vow. That is, one's Shinjin must have become settled so that one dwells in the stage of non-retrogression. From the first title, it is clear that for Shinran, dwelling in the stage of truly settled or non-retrogression is included within realization. Directing virtue for our return. The compassionate working to save unenlightened beings arises spontaneously from the attainment of enlightenment. It is again through Amida's Iko that we are enabled to participate in this bodhisattva activity. This aspect of Iko is called Gensho Iko, or directing virtue for our return. Since it originates from Amida's 22nd vow, the passage from the larger sutra concerning the fulfillment of this vow is quoted. Conclusion. Having elucidated the basic tenets of the Shin teaching, Shinran praises Amida's compassion, which is particularly manifested in creating conditions for the salvation of evil beings. He then urges all to seek Shinjin. It is emphasized that Amida's vow of salvation is extremely difficult to encounter, and that we should entrust ourselves to this supreme way of salvation.